We can learn so much about how to vitalize the body by learning from nature. In my teaching with the Feldenkrais Method, with movement, with how to activate your vitality using meditation practices, we look to the tree, and part of learning about vitality in nature is actually learning about nature. After every movement class, I teach a little bit about nature. And this is an excerpt from my latest series, Working with the Core and Working with Trees. So it's all about how to learn how to identify trees looking at their leaves. So one of the more common leaves, and oh Canada, this is a maple, and this is a big leaf maple. And you can see it's the size of my face or even larger, yeah. And what makes a maple is the pointy leaves. They're not rounded, they're pointed, and that is a really clear distinction thing. But there's a lot of different kinds of maples, and it can get pretty darn confusing, so I don't want to confuse you right now. I just wanted to give you Washington's really common big leaf maple, just to get a real sense of size. You could, put them for covering your body practically, but so much bigger than the hand, right? So I just want to show that. And then the other thing about big leaf maple and maples in general is the opposition of the way things are attached. If you look at every leaf is on the opposite of each other, okay? And that's a great way to identify maple trees in general. This is so fun. I've got to do this more often in my classes, have these live things. But anyway, I love that there's a few other trees that have opposite leaves, but it's a little more common to not have opposite leaves. But one of the opposite leaf tree is the dogwood. And I did not pick any because I have this little small dogwood tree and I just could not bear to take its branch. But dogwood trees also have this opposite, so you can look for that, but they're very different shaped leaves, more oval shaped. But I just wanted to really give you a clear sense, and most people really can identify maple. I wanted to show some different comparisons in leaf color. So you've got the back and the front of the leaf, which is a really interesting, how most leaves are more silvery on the back and greener on the top that's facing the sun. See if you can guess a little bit. Now, in the last class, we talked about this one. This is one of the most common trees in Washington, okay? It's a nitrogen fixing tree, and it often grows after there's been a clear cut or a burn. These are alders, okay? And if you look there, I put it right in front of my face, you can see the jagged edge. And what's really cool about leaves in general is that they're designed so that the water will drip off these edges and it won't rot the leaf. Isn't that brilliant? And so not all leaves have jagged edges. They have all these different designs that help with wind going through, and it's really brilliant, the diversity of the leaves. And I just, whatever season you're in, to go through and look at these fine details of the leaves, including the veins of the leaf, right? That's another great way to identify the leaf. And then how do they turn color through the season? That's a fun way to track. And you can get overwhelmed with any of these ID things, whether it's animal ID or trees. But what I found with trees is to try to learn the most common, like pick 5 trees and maybe start with just one, of course, and really get to know that one tree so that wherever you go, you start noticing where you find those trees. And are they in certain kinds of terrain? Are there other trees that always hang out with them? So you get this broad awareness of where trees are going to be found and what other kinds of trees tend to grow near them. And that's a really fun way to learn about nature in general. Because then once you learn about trees, actually you'll learn about the animals and the birds, because without them, without trees, they have no place to hide and there's not a lot of food. So trees, if you're a birder or you're just interested in nature in general, learning your trees will just expand your awareness of everything else in nature, which I love. I just absolutely love. So on the alder, please notice, right? It's opposite leaves. They're opposite. They're not two together, okay? They're opposite. So here's another one. I'll put it in front here. Smaller tree. This is a fruit tree, okay? This is an apple, okay? This is an apple tree, and the apple trees, oh, there's so many different varieties, and I actually don't know the variety. This is an old, they call it an old world apple tree, came from Europe, and they're yellowish, yellow-greenish colored apples. But anyway, and they keep through the winter. But this is a very almost leathery leaf, yeah? Much thicker, much darker green color. And again, opposite leaved, yeah? So just the shape of the leaves is another one. This one, if I bring it up close, let's see, I better put it right there. It doesn't have very many of these little teeth, yeah? But there are, if you look really close, it's not completely smooth around the edge of the leaf. And these are things you're going to have to check when you find a leaf. It's like, what is the outside? And it is very fine little jagged edge on this leaf, okay? Really fun. And then, of course, smell the leaf and all that kind of thing is really good to do too. And then the last one, this is, could be a shrub, could be a tree, and I want to talk about the difference between a tree and a shrub. This is an elderberry leaf, but notice the composition. They call it pinnate, or where they've got more than one leaf per branch of the leaf. Okay, so this has 7, and that one has 5. But elderberry can be a shrub or a tree. And it's a real common shrub and tree in Washington. It's the birds like the elderberries and so forth. They don't live that long. But the thing about what defines a tree is the diameter of the trunk needs to be a certain size, around 3 inches. And it needs to be at least 15 to 20 feet high. Otherwise, below that, it's a shrub. Shrubs can still be woody, like have that bark, right? But they aren't as tall and they're not as big a diameter. And that's why shrubs and trees can be a little confused. But it's all about the height and the diameter that makes a tree a tree. Well, there's more to learn about trees, but little by little, just start with something simple and gradually you will build your awareness from there. So thanks so much for your comments. Thanks for subscribing. And thanks to those who support me through Patreon. I really appreciate that. And I will see you next time. Take care. And this is a fine example of a big leaf maple. You can see the nice kind of straight branches that go up and out. They get pretty darn big here in Washington and Northwest. But they're very brittle branches, so you have to be careful in a storm.